Hi everyone, Bob here. Just another quick video. This one I'm actually not making anything as such today. What I wanted to do was answer some questions. So I've listed the 10 most commonly asked sort of questions that I get generally about weapon making and sort of things around weapons in generally. So I've probably answered most of these questions 10 times on Facebook each, and some of them are quite difficult to get down into a sentence. So I'm going to go through them. They're not in any particular order, and hopefully this will answer some of the things that you ask. So the first one, and probably the most common, is making your own weapons expensive? The short answer is yes. However, the long answer is maybe. I've probably addressed this in another video as well, but essentially, if you are intending on making just one thing for yourself, you could probably make a weapon like a sword or something for about the same price that it's going to cost you to actually go and buy one. So with all the bits and pieces you're going to need, it's probably going to cost you around the same price that you could buy a sword from any of the main manufacturers. The advantage of doing it yourself, of course, is you can make exactly what you want. You can make it look how you like. The disadvantage is that generally, and I include myself in this, the finish that you're going to get is not going to be as good as that of a pro company, and that's just a simple fact. The other thing, of course, with it is that you will probably, with the minimum amount of stuff that you're going to buy, you might get 2, maybe 3 weapons out of the stuff you buy. So potentially you could do 2 or 3. The downside of it, of course, is because you're making it yourself, there's no guarantee that what you've made is going to pass a weapons check. All right, if you buy a sword from a manufacturer, if it doesn't pass, you just take it back, and generally they're very good, and they'll just give you a refund or give you a different weapon or whatever. So is making weapons yourself expensive? I would say generally yes, but don't let that put you off having a go, because the upside of it is it's really fun to do. Second question: what's the biggest mistake people make when making weapons? Right, so there's a lot of mistakes people can make, but the biggest one that I think is research. People don't research before they pile in and make a weapon. So for me, the first thing that you want to do is read the rules for your LARP. Obviously I go to Empire, so if you are going to Empire and you are going to make your own weapons, go and read their rules on the wiki and be thoroughly versed in what it is that you're going to make. So lengths, the amount of foam that you're going to need to cover the core, all those sort of things. Particularly if you're making shields, because shields, you want it to pass. So you need to really make sure that you're making the right thing. And that goes for every LARP that you do. Read their rules first of all. Secondly, as I've said before, making weapons isn't cheap, so mistakes can be very expensive. So research. Go and talk to other weapons makers. Talk to the weapons checkers for your LARP. Talk to basically whoever you can find has got any experience in making weapons. Have a look at YouTube videos. There are some on my channel. They give you a basic idea of how to construct a few bits and pieces. There's lots of videos out there. Have a look at them. And once you've done that, then you should be in a decent place to have a go at making something yourself. But yeah, research, I would say, is the biggest mistake people make. They don't do any. They turn up at an event with their lovely shield or sword, and it immediately fails because it has not met the rules or the standards for that LARP. So yeah, research. Right. Is custom more expensive? Okay, so I guess this one is where someone is asking if someone else to make them a custom weapon rather than making it themselves. So, is custom more expensive? I would say no. Um, I think you'll find that most of the professional companies are more than happy to take your commissions. And generally, unless you want something, with very elaborate twiddly bits and lights in it and all sorts of custom things on it, then they're going to be roughly about the same price as a standard weapon. And the reason for that is the biggest amount of work in making a weapon is getting it to that sort of stage where it sort of looks like a sword. Once we've got it to that stage, we can add twiddly bits and a different hilt and some engraving down the blade and some runes on it, and the only thing that costs is time. So with the big manufacturers, the way that they work is they make what they call blanks in bulk. So they all make 1,000, well, 1,000, but a lot of sword blanks. So they'll all basically be a sword shape at various different lengths, and then they'll finish them off in their different styles later on. So if you put a commission in with someone like that, they'll already have the blank there. So half the work is already done, and then you just have to tell them how you want it finished. So generally, not more expensive. If you're going to someone like me, who is an amateur, then again, it's probably going to be around about the same price as you're going to pay in a shop for a shield or a sword. Obviously, we do it slightly differently. We're making it one product, one individual weapon or shield at a time. So that is a lot more, labour intensive. So potentially that costs more. But we generally don't charge the same as the pro companies because, like I've said before, generally the finish that we can achieve is generally, on the whole, not as good. That's not to say that every single amateur maker can't get a professional finish, because some of them certainly can. But on the whole, you've got to expect that if you go to an amateur, that it's not going to be quite as good. So generally, to the answer to that question is generally no, it's not more expensive, or not a lot more expensive. Right, next question. Will this pass weapons check? So this is probably by far the most asked question on places like the forums and Facebook. And the answer to this question is basically no idea. A weapons checker cannot tell you if a weapon will pass weapons check just by looking at it. It's impossible. It can't be done. You need to have that weapon in the hands of the weapons checker for your system. At that point, then they can tell you whether it will pass or not. It's as simple as that, really. People have often put in, oh, well, this is from this manufacturer, or this manufacturer, I got this from this person. No, until it's actually in the hands of a weapons checker, we can't say whether it's going to pass or not. So that's a simple one to answer. And this sort of leads neatly on to the next question is it okay to buy second hand? Yes, of course it's okay to buy second hand. However, until you've got that weapon in your hands, you're not going to know whether it's going to pass weapons check. So ideally, if you're buying second hand, you want to see it and touch it first before you part with your money. That's just my opinion. If you don't do that and you buy something off somebody on, eBay or something like that, there's no guarantee that weapon will pass for your LARP. In the comments they can say passed every time at whatever event. It might do, but I've seen weapons fail, which have been weapons checked in the morning. They've gone out for one skirmish, come back, gone for the main battle in the afternoon, and failed. So that is absolutely no guarantee that weapon will pass. So yeah, you can definitely buy second hand, and I think most people are sort of genuine, and they're not going to sell you something that has failed and describe it as passed. But it is a risk you take. So just bear that in mind. And as well, I think the price should reflect the fact that it is secondhand. So, you know, you should be paying considerably less for a weapon that is secondhand than for a brand new weapon. That's just my personal opinion. Right, next one. How long do weapons last? Okay, this is a bit of a how long is a piece of string, really. How long do weapons last? Right, well, it depends on where you've got the weapon from, who made it, how you've treated it, how you've looked after it, lots of different things. If you're buying a new weapon from a manufacturer or even an amateur maker like myself, you would expect it to last 12 months. All right, that would be the absolute minimum that you would expect it to last. And if something happens to it within those 12 months that isn't your fault, then that manufacturer would almost certainly be happy to take it back, either exchange it or repair it for you. So that's the short answer. The long answer is really they can last for years if you look after them. You know, as long as you make sure that you're following the manufacturer's guidelines in maintenance, or the person who's made it for you's guidelines in maintenance, should be fine. As long as you don't abuse them, again, they will last you for many years. Just on that note, a couple of big things that generally happen that will shorten the life of a weapon. If you're using the standard sort of construction of latex and isoflex, you need to put some silicone spray on it, or talc, that can work as well, but mainly silicone spray. It just stops the latex from drying out for a little bit longer, and keeps it nice. Don't store your swords tip down, because that is going to ruin the tip, and that will potentially cause a fail at some point, so store them point up, or even better, flat. Same with staffs, particularly staffs, because staffs are quite heavy. Don't try and store them flat if you can. And the other thing is, do not put heavy items on top of your weapons. So when you're packing your car at the end of an event, try and put your weapons in last on the top, not at the bottom, because what will happen is the foam potentially can get crushed, and if foam is crushed, that's where potential weapons fail. So yeah, just be sensible and look after them, and they will last you a long time. Is there a difference between the length of time a weapon will last from someone like me and from a manufacturer? Again, probably. You know, I don't have all the same equipment as a manufacturer's does. So, you know, saying that, I've got a sword that I made like almost 2 years ago. I call it Old Faithful. It's absolutely fine. It's passed every weapons check it's gone through for the last almost 2 years. And then I've made weapons that they've gone through one weapons check as a pass, and the next one they fail. It's a bit of a hit and miss potentially. I've taken them back, I've repaired them, and those people are getting those weapons back. But it does happen. And so it is something you've got to be prepared for. And again, I've seen swords from that people say, oh, I've only had it 6 months and it's failed the weapons check. It just does happen, you know. Especially, you know, if a manufacturer's making 100 swords, there's probably going to be one or two that the glue hasn't quite reached the end of the core, or the foam hasn't quite been fully latex properly. You know, I'm just saying examples there. I'm not saying that happens all the time, but you know, it can happen, and you could be the unlucky person that's just picked that one up. But as a rule, I would say I'd expect 12 months out of a weapon minimum. If you're the sort of person who does a lot of LARPs and you're away every single weekend, well, that's obviously going to affect the life of your weapon, because it's going to take a lot more damage and a lot more of beating. So I would expect those sort of weapons to not last quite so long. Hard one, that one, really. Hard question to answer. Okay, and sort of goes on to the next one, which is, should I buy from a reputable company, or a pro company, or an amateur? Well, again, this is a tricky one to answer. The short answer, I guess, is go with a professional company. for several reasons, really. First of all, their weapons are very high quality. They're very good. They are guaranteed. They are almost certainly not going to quibble with, you bringing a weapon back that's failed the weapons check, especially if it's under 12 months. You know, they are reasonably priced. There's no downsides to you going and buying a weapon from a professional company. Why would you buy from an amateur? So it's your mate, I guess. So if you've got a friend that's making weapons and you want to support them doing that, then yeah, buy something off them. It helps keep their costs down. If you want a custom weapon, then again, an amateur maker will probably be able to spend a lot more time with you getting exactly what you want right. I know I do, and I also post them progress pictures, so they get pictures of their whatever it is that they wanted made from, when it's basically a core all the way through to the end, so that they know exactly what's going on. And even in the process of making it, changes can be made, especially if you're on a one-to-one basis. And I've had that happen. Someone's going, oh, could I have a different color on this, or actually could I have it with a couple of runes in, or could you put some battle damage into it or something like that halfway through the manufacture, things like that. Yeah, we can do that. That's not a problem. Price wise, yeah, we're going to be about the same. The fact that the pro makers make them in bulk helps them keep their profit margin. So they've got to make a living, and that's the way they do it. Generally, amateur makers like myself, this is not our living; it's our hobby. However, it does take an awful lot of time, and as I've mentioned in one of the previous questions, is it expensive? Yes, it is. So we need to at least cover our costs of making whatever it is that you want. And I can tell you now that the prices that I charge for people to have a weapon made, I don't really make anything on them. I make enough to help fund some of my event. That's about it, really. But generally, I do it for enjoying making the thing rather than making money. I certainly don't make money on it. Okay, so what are the biggest mistakes to avoid when making weapons? I'm guessing that one is. Right, so biggest mistakes to avoid. I've already mentioned in a sort of similar one, what's the biggest mistake with making weapons, is research. I would say the biggest mistake that I have made with making weapons is actually being a little bit overcautious with getting them passed on weapons check. Before I actually started weapons checking, which I've now done, I sort of erred on the side of caution with making things, with a lot of foam on them, making the cores, perhaps not quite the length that they really should be. So that's probably the biggest mistake. So with swords, I probably have the core too short. That's my biggest mistake. So the end of the sword or the dagger, wherever it is floppy. Nothing wrong with that in the fact that it will pass weapons check, because it will. However, weapons checkers don't tend to like it because it's unusual. They don't normally see that sort of thing in a sword. And also, if you've got a lot of play in the end of a sword where the tip moves about, the fact that tip moving potentially weakens the glue, because the bit that the glue that's onto the core is constantly moving, and that movement will weaken that area of the sword, and eventually the tip will fail. So by trying to make sure that the tip doesn't poke out the end, actually you've probably made a poorer weapon, because eventually what's going to happen is that tip is going to bend like that, and the core will poke through the bottom. You're actually better off having the tip much closer to the end of the sword. So that's probably for my biggest mistake that I've made when making weapons. Right, what else have I done? What's the biggest improvement you've made to your weapons? Right, there's a couple, I would say, with different stages in me making them. First one was moving from camping mat to proper foam. So I moved to LD45 foam, and it's a little bit like day and night, the quality that you can get from LD45 foam compared to a camping mat. Not to say that you can't make stuff out of camping mat. I have, and I made a rod, one of the very first things I made, and that has passed every single event that I've been to. So it's, you know, almost 2 years, and it's passed every single event. It's soft, which I guess is a good thing, because you're not going to hurt anybody when you whack them with it, and it's been absolutely fine. However, the finish that you get with it is not great, and also if you're making a sword out of that stuff, it's really tricky. And the daggers that I made out of camping mat, the first ones, was really poor. So LD45, that's a big improvement. And then two others. Glue is the next one. So I use, you'll see in my other videos that I use a sort of Wix contact adhesive. It's fine. However, I use different glue now, which is Fix Alpha, which is just a better glue. And the weapons that I make with that are much less likely to fail than the older ones that I've made with the Wix glue. It's just a stronger glue. And then the last thing I would say, which should be a very recent thing, is spraying. So up until a couple of weeks ago, well, a few months ago, I was using brushes and rollers, and it's okay, it's fine. I have now got myself a compressor and a spray gun, and the finish that I can get with a weapon has increased tremendously. Basically, the fact that you can have a smooth finish makes all the difference. A compressor and a spray gun are not cheap, so you know that would be for someone who's really wants to make a lot of weapons, or are really into weapon making, or it's something that you really want to pursue, you know, then by all means get one. It will make the finish of your weapons better. Or if you're someone who's already got one, fantastic, you know, you can spray latex through them. That's actually one of the hardest questions I had, was to find for myself, was how do you spray latex? Eventually some of the professional makers gave me some advice on it, so and it's not actually that hard. It is hard adjusting it all to make sure that you're spraying it right, but actually spraying the latex it's easy. Okay, what else have we got? Right, okay, probably the last one then. My weapon has failed, weapons check, what do I do now? Or / how can I fix it? This one's a little bit like, again, this is like on forums and things. This one is a little bit like, will this pass weapons check? The answer basically is, I don't know. What I would advise you to do is, the first thing that you need to do is, when it fails the weapons check, get the weapons checker to give you a detailed reason why. All right. Anyone who's going to repair that weapon for you will want to know exactly why it has failed. They will probably be able to tell themselves, but if you can have a detailed reason of what it was that the weapons checker failed it on, very helpful. So do that. Ask lots of questions. Say, why is it? And they won't mind. You know, it's not like you're saying, you know, saying, oh well, this shouldn't have failed or anything. Just, you know, it's like they should be able to explain to you why it has failed. If they can't explain to you why it has failed, then perhaps you might need a second opinion. But yeah, they should be able to explain to you exactly why it has failed. Once you've got that information, then you can go to someone who can repair them. And again, Usually weapons checkers are either weapons makers themselves, or they know people who are weapons makers. They might be able to direct you to someone who can repair it for you. It really depends on what it is that has failed. So if it is something like a sword where the glue has just come off on the tip, then it's not a particularly difficult thing to repair. So it might be practical for you to get someone to do that for you. Or if you're having a go at making weapons yourself, maybe you can have a go at doing it yourself. If it's something like a broken core, then probably that weapon is done for. All right. So again, I'm saying probably, until someone gets it in their hands, they can't really tell. But if your core's broken, it's probably had it. If it's a compression, so where, let's say you've put something heavy on your staff, that can be repaired. It can be cut out, new foam put in, and it re-latex and re-isoflexed. And generally, those sort of things are reasonably easy to repair, so they can be done. If your weapon has failed a weapons check and you don't think that it can be repaired, all is still not lost. Okay, so at the very limit, if the core's not broken, that weapon can be stripped back down to its core and a complete new weapon built around it. Cores aren't cheap, especially if you've got like a carbon fibre one, which are often in spears. Do not throw them away, okay? You could even potentially sell them just for the core on, eBay. Strip it down yourself, or make it very, very clear that this weapon has failed weapons check. And some weapon makers might actually buy it off you just for the core. You might make a tenner or something on it. Yeah, so I guess that's the sort of thing to do. Don't panic is really the thing I would say. Don't panic if your weapon has failed weapons check. All is not lost. You don't need to throw it in the bin. The chances are it can be repaired. And even if it can't be repaired, it can be stripped down and the core can be reused. So yeah, that's about it. It does suck if your weapon gets failed just as you're going into battle. That really does suck. But safety's first, and you don't want something that's dangerous going on the battlefield. So that's why we have to do it. Right, I hope that sort of answered some of the sort of bigger questions that I tend to get asked a lot. If you can think of any others that you might like answering, stick them in the comments, and I might do another shortish video answering some of those questions. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.